I used to believe that once you were married, you found a rhythm that didn't need constant attention. My husband is a good man, but somewhere between the endless work trips, late-night calls, and casual indifference, we slipped into a pattern where I wasn't sure if he even saw me anymore. The touches that used to linger now brushed past like afterthoughts. Conversations became logistical updates about bills and schedules. Nights ended with him snoring quietly beside me while I stared at the ceiling, wondering if this was all marriage was meant to be. When his son moved back in after college, I didn't expect anything to shift. I told myself it would just be an adjustment, nothing more. He was a man now, tall, confident, carrying that casual strength that comes from youth. His presence changed the air in the house, subtle but undeniable. There was an energy about him, something I hadn't realized I missed until it was right in front of me. The first few days were innocent enough. Small conversations over coffee, bumping into each other in the kitchen, laughing over stupid jokes that my husband would have ignored. I noticed things I shouldn't have. The way his shirt clung to his body when he came back sweaty from a run, the easy smile he gave me when I teased him about leaving his shoes everywhere. I tried to push the thoughts away. He was my stepson. He trusted me. I was supposed to be better than this. But then there were moments, tiny, insignificant-seeming moments, that stuck. The way his hand brushed my lower back when he squeezed past me at the counter. How he held eye contact just a little longer than necessary when we talked. The warmth that crept into my face when he complimented the way I wore my hair one morning. I laughed it off, blaming the sudden attention on my own loneliness. It was late one evening when I realized how deep I was already sinking. I had been reading on the couch, the television playing some mindless background noise. He came in, flopping down beside me with a heavy sigh. His body pressing just close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off him. We joked about the show, made fun of the characters, laughed harder than I had in months. Somewhere in that laughter, something shifted. His hand brushed my knee, lingering a second too long. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, my heart pounding against my ribs so hard it hurt. That night, lying in bed next to my husband's oblivious body, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The casual touch, the easy conversation, the way my body had responded without hesitation. I hated myself for it. Hated the way my hands wandered over my own skin, imagining a world I had no right to even dream about. I told myself it was just a fantasy. It would pass. I was lonely, that's all. But fantasies have a way of creeping into reality when you're not careful. The next morning, he was in the kitchen when I came downstairs. Shirtless, making coffee. His muscles flexing with every casual movement. He smiled at me like it was the most natural thing in the world, like we shared some secret. I fumbled with the coffee mugs, cursing myself internally for the way my hands trembled. I could feel his eyes on me, tracing the outline of my body through the thin fabric of my robe. Should have disgusted me. Instead, I felt a thrill run through me, sharp and intoxicating. I didn't eat breakfast that morning. Couldn't. My stomach twisted itself into knots every time I thought about the way he had looked at me, the way I had responded. I told myself again and again that it was nothing, just my imagination. A woman starved for attention, seeing things that weren't there. But it wasn't nothing. And it wasn't my imagination. It was the way he made excuses to be near me, brushing past me in tight spaces where he didn't have to, finding reasons to ask for help with things he could easily do himself. It was the way he touched me, innocently enough to be dismissed if I wanted to, but lingering just long enough to set my skin on fire. It was the way he looked at me when he thought no one else was paying attention, like he wanted something he knew he shouldn't. And God help me, it was the way I wanted him too. Every touch, every glance, every casual brush of skin against skin chipped away at the walls I had built around myself. I stopped wearing my wedding ring in the house. I told myself it was because it got caught on the laundry, but the truth was uglier than that. I liked how he looked at me without it. I liked pretending just for a little while that I was someone else. Someone desirable. Someone wanted. I started dressing differently. Nothing obvious, nothing anyone could call out, but enough. Softer fabrics that clung to curves. necklines that dipped just a little lower. I told myself it was for me, that I deserved to feel good about myself. But deep down, I knew exactly who I was dressing for. The guilt gnawed at me, sharp and constant, but it couldn't drown out the need that had taken root inside me. It grew stronger every day, fed by his attention, his smiles, the accidental touches that weren't accidents at all. It became a pulse, a drumbeat I couldn't escape. I went to bed aching for something I couldn't admit even to myself, my body betraying me night after night while my husband slept just inches away. I kept telling myself it would never happen, that I was strong enough to resist, that this was just a phase, a foolish crush born out of loneliness and neglect. But even then, deep down where the truth hides from the light, I knew I was lying to myself. I knew it was only a matter of time. The lines between what was appropriate and what was dangerous blurred faster than I could keep up with. Every day he found new reasons to be close to me, casual touches that lingered too long, compliments that were too personal, conversations that felt too intimate. I stopped pretending not to notice. I stopped pretending I didn't want it. One evening, after my husband had fallen asleep early upstairs, I stayed behind in the kitchen, cleaning up dishes I didn't need to clean. He walked in, leaning casually against the counter, just watching me. I could feel his eyes moving over my body, slow and heavy, and instead of covering myself, I kept my back to him longer than necessary, letting the silence stretch. When I turned around, he was closer than I expected. His hand reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. I froze, my breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat, but I didn't step back. "You look beautiful tonight," he said, his voice low enough that it barely carried between us. I should have laughed it off. I should have reminded him who I was supposed to be to him. Instead, I let the compliment settle over me, warm and thrilling. His thumb grazed my jawline, and for one heart-stopping moment, I thought he was going to kiss me. I wanted him to. I stepped back then, mumbling something about needing to check on his father. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the banister as I climbed the stairs. In bed, my husband stirred but didn't wake as I slipped under the covers, my mind racing, my skin still burning from a touch that had lasted only seconds. The next few days were a haze of stolen glances and unsaid words. He didn't push. He didn't have to. He just waited, confident, knowing I was already unraveling. I told myself I needed distance, but every time I heard his footsteps behind me, every time his arm brushed mine at the table, I felt my resolve weaken. One afternoon we found ourselves alone again, the house too quiet, the air thick between us. He asked if I could help him with something in the garage, lifting a heavy box he pretended he couldn't manage on his own. I knew it was an excuse, but I followed him anyway. The moment the door closed behind us, the air shifted. He stepped closer, his body crowding mine, his eyes dark and intent. "You're driving me crazy," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I can't stop thinking about you." I should have pushed him away. I should have said something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just stood there, heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. His hand came up, fingers tracing the line of my arm, slow and deliberate. When his hand curled around the back of my neck, I didn't flinch. I tilted my head up, my body moving of its own accord, and in that breathless space between thought and action, he kissed me. The first touch of his mouth against mine was tentative, testing, giving me the chance to pull away. I didn't. I leaned into him, my hands gripping his shirt, holding him there, deepening the kiss with a hunger that had been festering inside me for far too long. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me flush against him, and I could feel every hard line of his body pressed to mine. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was months of longing, weeks of unspoken tension exploding all at once. His hands roamed my body, claiming places no one had touched in too long. I gasped against his mouth when he pressed me back against the wall, his thigh wedging between mine, the heat of him sending sparks through my bloodstream. My robe slipped from my shoulder, and his mouth found my skin, trailing hot, desperate kisses along my collarbone. I clutched at him, nails digging into his back, grounding myself against the tidal wave of sensation threatening to pull me under. When he whispered my name, reverent and raw, I nearly sobbed. Felt like being seen for the first time in years. Felt like waking up. Reality came crashing down hard and fast, guilt slamming into me like a cold fist. I pushed him away, chest heaving, heart in my throat. His eyes were wild, searching my face, but he didn't force it. He just stood there, breathing hard, letting me make the next move. "I can't," I whispered, more to myself than to him. But even as I said it, my body screamed the opposite. Every nerve ending begged me to close the distance, to give in to what we both wanted so desperately. I shook my head, backing away until my spine hit the door. I yanked it open and fled into the house, leaving him standing there, silent and still. I spent the rest of the night pretending nothing had happened. I made dinner, laughed at stupid sitcoms, kissed my husband goodnight like my lips hadn't just betrayed him hours earlier. But inside I was unraveling. I couldn't erase the feel of his mouth on mine, the way his hands had claimed me so easily, so completely. I couldn't escape the way my body still hummed with the memory of him. When I finally crawled into bed that night, I lay awake for hours, replaying every second, every touch, every kiss. My hand drifted beneath the covers, seeking relief. But it wasn't my husband's face I saw behind my closed eyes. It was his son's. It was the way he had looked at me, hungry and desperate, like I was something he couldn't live without. I hated myself for it. I hated how badly I wanted it to happen again. And deep down, under the layers of shame and guilt, I knew it wasn't over. It was only just beginning. I spent the next day pretending I was still strong enough to fight it. I busied myself with chores, made excuses to be out of the house, did anything to avoid being alone with him again. But pretending was useless. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still feel his mouth on my skin, the way he had kissed me like he needed me just to breathe, the way I had kissed him back. By evening, my resolve was hanging by a thread. I could feel it snapping, strand by strand, with every casual glance he gave me. He didn't push, didn't say a word, but I could feel him waiting, ready for the moment I would finally give in completely. And I hated how much I needed him to. After dinner, my husband mumbled something about being exhausted and disappeared upstairs. I stayed behind under the excuse of cleaning up, my hands moving automatically, my mind somewhere else entirely. I didn't even hear him come into the kitchen until he was standing behind me, so close I could feel the heat of his body along my back. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence between us said everything. When I finally turned around, I didn't have a chance to second-guess myself. His hands were on me instantly, firm and sure, pulling me against him. His mouth captured mine in a kiss that left no room for hesitation, no space for guilt or shame. My arms wrapped around his neck, pulling him closer, needing more, needing everything. I should have stopped it. I knew that. But the truth was I didn't want to. I let him lead me, let him take from me what I had been aching to give. His hands roamed my body with desperate reverence, like he was memorizing every inch of me. Clothes became obstacles we barely had the patience to remove, fingers fumbling in our urgency to feel more, to have more. His mouth was everywhere, neck, collarbone, the swell of my breasts, leaving trails of heat that made my head spin. When he finally entered me, it was overwhelming. I gasped against his shoulder, clutching at him like I could somehow anchor myself against the storm raging inside me. He filled me completely, stretched me in a way that felt both shocking and inevitable. My body welcomed him without hesitation, without shame, only pure, consuming need. I begged him not to stop. I whispered it against his ear, my nails digging into his skin, my hips meeting his in frantic, needy movements. I needed him like I had never needed anyone, needed to be wanted, needed to be taken. And he did. God, he did. It wasn't slow or gentle. It was raw, frantic, years of loneliness and neglect exploding into something wild and unstoppable. I clung to him, moaning his name against his skin, losing myself completely in the overwhelming pleasure of it. Every thrust, every kiss, every desperate touch pushed me higher, drove me closer to the edge. When release finally tore through me, it was blinding. I cried out, my entire body shuddering with the force of it, clutching him tighter as he followed me over the edge, groaning my name like a prayer he wasn't supposed to say. We collapsed against each other, breathing hard, skin slick with sweat, bodies still tangled together. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the frantic pounding of our hearts, the ragged pull of our breath. I should have felt shame. I should have been drowning in guilt. But all I felt was overwhelming, bone-deep satisfaction. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt alive. Felt seen. I felt wanted. He pressed soft kisses against my shoulder, his hands still roaming my body like he couldn't bear to let go. I turned my head, capturing his mouth with mine again, slower this time, savoring the taste of him, the reality of what we had done. Somewhere in the back of my mind, the guilt was waiting. It would come later, I knew that. It would rip me apart in the dark, whisper all the ugly truths I was trying so hard to ignore. But for now, for this moment, I refused to let it steal this from me. I whispered his name against his lips, feeling the way he shivered under me, the way his hands tightened on my hips like he needed me just as badly as I needed him. It wasn't love. It wasn't even about him, not really. It was about being wanted, about being touched and needed and worshipped after so many years of being invisible. He kissed me again, slower, deeper, his hands gentle now, tracing patterns against my back. I closed my eyes, letting myself sink into it, letting myself feel everything I had tried so hard to deny. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if this was a mistake we would regret or a secret we would carry forever. I didn't care. All I cared about was the way he made me feel, the way he looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a wife fading quietly into the background. Felt alive. Felt powerful. I felt desired. And no matter how much guilt would come crashing down later, no matter how much I would hate myself when the world returned to normal, I knew I would never be able to forget the way he made me feel tonight. I would never be able to pretend it hadn't happened. Because some things, once crossed, can never be undone. And I didn't want to undo this. The morning after, everything felt different. The weight of what we had done settled over me like a second skin, impossible to shake off. I moved through the motions of breakfast in a haze, hyper-aware of every movement, every glance. He sat across the table, looking at me with eyes that still held traces of the night before, and it made my hands tremble as I poured coffee. My husband sat between us, oblivious, talking about weekend plans, work stress, bills, everything normal, everything safe. I nodded and smiled at the right times, pretending I wasn't falling apart inside. I could still feel the imprint of his son's hands on my body, still hear the way he had whispered my name against my skin, still taste the hunger we had unleashed. It felt surreal, dangerous, and so thrilling I almost couldn't breathe. I avoided his gaze, but I could feel it, heavy and constant, like a tether pulling me back to him. Every time our eyes met by accident, the memory would flash bright and vivid between us. The way we had clung to each other, the way I had begged him, the way he had filled me completely, claiming parts of me I had forgotten even existed. I spent the day keeping busy, desperate to stay away from the house, desperate to put space between us, but it was useless. He was everywhere. In the empty spaces of my mind, in the quiet moments when no one was looking, in the burning ache between my legs that still throbbed with the memory of him. When I finally returned home, it was late. I tiptoed around like a ghost, avoiding everyone, hoping he wouldn't be there, hoping he would. The house was silent, heavy with the things we weren't saying. I crept upstairs and locked myself in the bathroom, leaning over the sink, staring at my reflection. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. Her eyes were too wild, too alive. Guilt clawed at my chest, sharp and relentless. I had crossed a line I could never uncross. I had betrayed the man who trusted me, the life we had built. I had destroyed the image of the woman I had pretended to be for so long. And yet, beneath the shame, there was a fierce, desperate satisfaction. I didn't want to take it back. That terrified me more than anything. The next few days were a delicate dance. We barely spoke, barely touched, but the air between us crackled with everything we couldn't say. Every time we were alone, the tension twisted tighter, suffocating, dangerous. I could feel him watching me, could feel his needs simmering just below the surface, matching my own. One night, after everyone else had gone to bed, I found him standing at the bottom of the stairs, waiting. No words, no promises, no apologies. Just a silent understanding. I hesitated, heart hammering so loudly I thought it might wake the whole house. And then I moved toward him, helpless to do anything else. He caught me halfway, hands grabbing my waist, pulling me against him. His mouth found mine in a kiss that was rough, desperate, full of all the things we couldn't say out loud. I clung to him, drinking him in, needing him in a way that was terrifying and exhilarating. We didn't go as far this time. It was quick, frantic, hands sliding under clothes, teeth scraping against skin, bodies pressed together in a fevered rush of need. It was reckless and stupid and so achingly good it made my head spin. When it was over, we didn't speak. We just stood there, breathing each other in, knowing this was only making everything worse, knowing we couldn't stop. The days blurred together after that. Every touch, every glance was charged, electric. We became experts at hiding it, smiling and laughing and playing the parts we were supposed to play. But under the surface we were burning. Every second we weren't touching felt unbearable. Every second it felt like drowning and breathing at the same time. I tried to convince myself it would pass. That it was just lust, just loneliness, just a mistake. But deep down I knew the truth. I didn't want it to end. I didn't want to go back to the way things were before. I didn't want to be invisible again. Late one night, lying next to my husband's sleeping body, I felt my phone buzz quietly on the nightstand. A single message from him. I can't stop thinking about you. Simple. Honest. Devastating. I stared at the words, heart pounding, knowing I should delete it, knowing I should block him, run away, confess, do anything to make it right. Instead, my fingers moved on their own, typing out a reply before I could think better of it. That tiny exchange was a fuse, burning slow and inevitable. We found more excuses to be alone, more stolen moments, more whispered confessions against each other's skin. Every time I told myself it would be the last. Every time I swore I would find the strength to walk away. Every time I failed. There was a kind of freedom in the fall, a wildness I hadn't realized I had been craving. I wasn't just cheating on my husband. I was cheating on the version of myself I had spent years building. The good wife, the dutiful woman, the one who sacrificed and smiled and settled. I was setting her on fire and watching her burn. He made me feel like I mattered. Like I was still wanted, still alive, still capable of feeling something so intense it scared me. I didn't know where it was leading. I didn't know how it would end. I just knew I wasn't ready to let it go. Maybe someday we would be caught. Maybe someday it would all come crashing down around us. Maybe someday I would pay the price for every stolen touch, every whispered lie, every night spent in his arms instead of my husband's. But not today. Today I would steal every moment I could. I would let myself drown in him, lose myself in the way he said my name, the way he looked at me like I was something precious, something worth breaking the rules for. Today I would choose him. And I wouldn't regret it. Not yet.